Hey guys, it's Alex.da.bibliophile, bookish content creator, and today is day 3 of the 30-day Black Booktube is Reading Challenge. And I'm super excited about today because we're going on an author talk. So let's get into it. Today, we will be going to Impossible Moon Bookshop in Hateville, Georgia for an author talk featuring Tayari Jones. If you watched the last video, you know that Tayari Jones's book, An American Marriage, is the reason I started back reading again. And so I'm super excited to attend this event today where she will be discussing her latest book, Ken. So make sure you stay. This is spoiler free, but you get to hear directly from the author. Let's go. Today's author talk is with Tayari Jones to discuss her book, Ken. We went to Hateville, Georgia, and this is actually a beautiful little cozy town. We are going to Impossible Moon Bookshop. It is Black owned and woman owned and super cute inside. It is the cutest little cozy bookshop ever. And yesterday's event was decorated so nicely. They had plenty of books in store. They actually had copies of Tayari Jones's entire catalog. Dr. Brianna J. McDaniel is the owner of this bookshop, and she's also an author. She did this in conjunction with Peachy Pear Book Club, and they hosted the event.
But the book is about two girls, Annie and Bernice, who are best friends from when they are two infants sharing a cradle. And what they have in common is that neither of them has their mother. Nisi's mother was murdered when she was just an infant in an act of domestic violence, so she never knew her mother. And Annie's mother ran off and left her. So Nisi has this kind of blessed dead mother in the sky. You know, everyone's like, oh, you poor thing, I knew your mother. She was such a lovely girl, you know, like that. Where Annie's mother, who left her, so Annie has that shame of being abandoned, and everyone says that her mother is this black word that you can never come back from, trifling. And so even though they're both motherless, they're motherless in different ways. And so they come up through life together, but they're still so close. But as they get to be adults, their lives go in different directions. Annie goes off to Memphis on a wild goose chase to try to find the mother who abandoned her, where Nisi goes to Atlanta and attends Spelman College in search of a different kind of life. The book is set in the 1950s. So it's really about people coming of age in the Jim Crow South and what it meant to be women in that time. What was really interesting to me is like, what is this feeling of not having your mother? And what does mother really mean for Black women? Because there are a lot of people, even though you have your mother, people still feel that loss. So both girls are reared by women who are not their mothers, but who have to take them in. And so as Nisi says, you know, we were tended to, but never mothered. You know, the main thing that, you know, this is a story really about found family, because Annie and Nisi, you know, they're not blood kin, but they're kin. But they meet all these other people along the way who become connected with them. But one thing I think is that when we talk about found family, when I started writing this, I used to call it found family, but now I like to think of it as curated family. That we curate the lives we want. And we kind of think of curated family as a referendum on your biological family. Like the idea is like, if you don't have a biological mother, then you have to find a mother. If you don't have a father, you find a father. If you don't have a sister, you find a sister. But I disagree now. After reading this, I think we all have curated family. It's not a referendum on your biological family. Because, you know, almost like even when you use the term biological family, it means you don't like those people. Part of it is because I felt that as a Black writer, there is so much pressure that you're supposed to fill in the gaps of history. You're supposed to write historical, you know, slavery if you can, but if not, you know, something a little later, then that's your job. And I always felt like, well, I mean, if I'm writing my grandmother or my great-grandmother's story, then what, is my granddaughter supposed to write my story? Like, although I'm sure that I don't even have a grandchild, but my hypothetical granddaughter, I'm sure she's brilliant. But she cannot tell my story as well as I can. Right. So I really made it my work to say, no, I'm telling my own story. But I do think that if you focus so much on not doing something, then that person ends up telling you what to do, because your resistance is coming around the other direction. But I was trying to write a contemporary novel about, Atlanta now. Really asking the question, can black people be gentrifiers? Can you gentrify your own neighborhood? So I had this, I think it's a great idea. I'll tell you something, I think it's a good idea. I had an idea of a woman who comes back to Atlanta after being away. She moves into the exact same house she grew up in, but the neighborhood has changed. The house has been renovated. So even though she grew up in this house, she has money now. Is she gentrifying her home block, the block where she grew up? And she's running into the people she grew up with, and they're not living the same kind of life. So I thought this was interesting. So I felt like it was a really good idea. It was like I was on a blind date with a really good idea. It was tall, it had a good job. But me and the book, we just didn't have any chemistry. Me and this idea didn't have any chemistry. This is what I really thought about the ending. This is a story about a friendship. And the end of the book is when the friendship ends. I believe that one of the things, I think I have this in most of my books, that when you make a story about something different than what people think stories are usually about, it's disconcerting, right? Like usually if you have a story about a woman and she's married, whatever, you think the question of the story, is her marriage gonna work? Or is she gonna have kids? Like that's what we think a story is. And so when the story doesn't answer those questions, it's disconcerting. Like my first novel, Leaving Atlanta, is about growing up in Atlanta during the child murders. At the end of the book, the child murders are still going on. You don't know who done it. But the expectation of a story about a murder is that it ends with the question of who done it. But I felt that book, if you solve the murders at the end, then it becomes a story about the police. Like it becomes a story about the state, and I wanted it to be a story about the community. So in this one, I really wanted it to be about these two friends and what happens to them, and about this idea of connection and dignity. Like those were and I feel like those questions are answered. And so that's how I felt it. Now I knew that somebody wasn't going to survive the book, though, because I felt like I don't think you could talk for 100 pages about somebody being the heir to a funeral home family. Right. Now you say the word funeral 5 times in the book, somebody is going to die.
I hope you enjoyed today's author talk with Tayari Jones. Continue to follow along on this 30-day journey. Make sure that you tap into some of the other content creators and see what they have going on. In fact, just watch the whole playlist. But until next time, guys, happy reading.